Hey everyone, welcome to this lesson. So in this one, I want to talk about block scopes, and I want to explain if the Python does have a block scope or not. Now, one of the things that we did talk about in a previous video, if you remember, was the global versus local scope. And I mentioned, how when you put a variable or a function inside another function, you're not going to be able to refer to it outside or, on a global scale. So, we did talk about that. Now, one of the things that I want you to remember is that there are other, block type of codes that we have on Python. For example, one of them is actually the if and else statement. So, let's actually write a code real quick. I'm just going to say, for example, game level equals 3. For example, let's say we have a game where we have a level and we're going to spawn different enemies based on the difficulty, right? So based on the difficulty, what kind of difficulty they're at. So for example, I'm going to say, let's have like enemies as well. Enemies, let's say I'm going to say, and we're going to make a list. I'm just going to say skeleton, and we're going to add maybe another one called zombie. Okay, and maybe another one called alien. All right, so we got 3 enemy types, for example, for this. And then I'm gonna have an if statement. I'm gonna say if game level, there you go, game level is bigger than 5 or less than 5, for example, right? We're gonna say new enemy equals enemies, and we're gonna maybe spawn the first one. So the zombie is gonna be the first one. So I want you to think about this. So right now, what we did was that we created an if statement, and inside this if statement, we actually, defined a new variable, right? New enemy equals enemies equals enemy 0. So this is going to refer to this particular, this particular string, right? Now, one of the things about Python is that, which is a little bit different from other programming languages, is that any variable that is defined inside an if and else or while loop statement is actually on a global scale. All right, so this is not the case on, let's say, other languages such as C#, C++, I think, some other languages, and specifically Java as well. But on Python, this is actually a variable that is, big, even though if it's inside this if statement, it's still on a global scale. So if I actually refer to this, for example, because the print, and if I print the new enemy, I will be able to print the first thing, which is skeleton. So we just printed skeleton right here. So my point is that, if you define a variable inside an if statement or while loop or, for loop, those variables or functions are actually on a global level. So they're not going to be local. So just wanted to point this out because, I remember I mentioned that in the previous video, I mentioned like functions and like all this stuff that you put inside a function. So I kind of get it that this can be a little bit confusing. But remember, anything that you put inside an if statement, or for loop or whatever, that becomes a variable or a function on a global scope. All right. So that means that you can refer to it in your code with no problem. So that's just how it works. Make sure you remember that. Only global and local scopes are only, when you put something inside a function. All right. So that's something to remember. So guys, let me know if you have any questions. If not, I'll see you in the next video.